We retain personnel and capacities in the country, and we maintain some authority, the same authority under which we've been operating for some time. I intend to maintain our diplomatic presence in Afghanistan. To be clear, countries in the region have an essential role to play in supporting a peaceful settlement. We're going to continue to work for the release of detained Americans, including Mark Ferrix. I want to pronounce the name correctly. I misspoke, so that he can return to his family safely. Up to now, fewer than half have exercised their right to do that. Half have gotten on aircraft and commercial flights and come, and the other half believe they want to stay. And those who have stood up for the operation to physically relocate thousands of Afghans and their families before the U.S. military mission concludes, so that if they choose, they can wait safely outside of Afghanistan. And starting this month, we're going to begin to begin relocation flights for Afghanistan SIV applicants and their families who choose to leave. But our message to those women and men is clear. There is a home for you in the United States if you so choose, and we will stand with you just as you stood with us. May God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
Mr. President, do you trust the Taliban, Mr. President?
Is a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not. Because you have the Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
Do you trust the Taliban, Mr. President? Do you trust the Taliban, sir?
Is that a serious question?
It's absolutely a serious question. Do you trust the Taliban?
No, I do not.
The country to the Taliban.
No, I do not trust the Taliban.
So why are you handing the country over?
Is the U.S. responsible for the deaths of Afghans after you leave the
Mr. President, will you amplify that question, please? Will you amplify your answer, please, why you don't trust the Taliban?
It's a silly question. Do I trust the Taliban? No. But I trust the capacity of the Afghan military, who is better trained, better equipped, and more competent in terms of conducting war. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Given the amount of money that has been spent and the number of lives that have been lost, in your view, with making this decision, were the last 20 years worth it?
You know my record. I can tell by the way you asked the question. I opposed permanently having American forces in Afghanistan. I argued from the beginning, as you may recall. It came to light after the administration was over, lasted our administration. No nation has ever unified Afghanistan. No nation. Empires have gone there and not done it. The focus we had, and I strongly supported, and you may remember, I physically went to Afghanistan. I was up in that pass where Osama bin Laden was allegedly escaped or out of harm's way. We went for two reasons. One, to bring Osama bin Laden to the gates of hell, as I said at the time.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Your own intelligence community has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse.
That is not true.
Can you please clarify what they have told you about whether that will happen or not?
That is not true. They did not reach that conclusion.
So what is the level of confidence that they have that it will not collapse?
The Afghan government and leadership has to come together.
Mr. President, thank you. But we have talked to your own top general in Afghanistan, General Scott Miller. He told ABC News the conditions are so concerning at this point that it could result in a civil war. So if Kabul falls to the Taliban, what will the United States do about it?
Look, you've said two things. One, that if it could result in a civil war. That's different than the Taliban succeeding, number one. Number two, the question of what will be done is going to be implicated, is going to implicate the entire region as well. There's a number of countries that have a grave concern about what's going to happen in Afghanistan relative to their security.
Mr. President, some Vietnamese veterans see echoes of their experience in this withdrawal in Afghanistan. Do you see any parallels between this withdrawal and what happened in Vietnam, with some people feeling...
None whatsoever. Zero. What you had entire brigades breaking through the gates of our embassy. 6, if I'm not mistaken. The Taliban is not the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability. Go to the other side. Yeah. Hang on a second.
Mr. President, how serious was the corruption among the Afghanistan government to this mission failing there?
Well, first of all, the mission hasn't failed yet. There is, in Afghanistan, and all parties, there's been corruption. The question is, can there be an agreement on unity of purpose? What is the objective? For example, it started off, there were going to be negotiations between the Taliban and the Afghan National Security Forces and the Afghan government. That didn't come to fruition. So the question now is, where do they go from here? That the jury is still out, but the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. President, will the United States be responsible for the loss of Afghan civilian lives that could happen after the military exit?
No, no, no. It's up to the people of Afghanistan to decide on what government they want, not us to impose the government on them. No country's ever been able to do that. Keep in mind, as a student of history, as I'm sure you are, never has Afghanistan been a united country, not in all of its history.
Mr. President, if this isn't a mission accomplished moment, what is it in your
No,
view?
there's no mission accomplished.
How would you describe it?
The mission was accomplished in that we got Osama bin Laden, and terrorism is not emanating from that part of the world.
Mr. President, safety, as you just said in your remarks, are you satisfied with the timeline of relocating Afghan nationals? Is it happening quickly enough to your satisfaction, if it may not happen until next month at the end?
Well, much of it's already happened. There's already been people, about 1,000 people have gotten on aircraft and come to the United States already on commercial aircraft.
Why can't the U.S. evacuate these Afghan translators to the United States to await their visa processing, as some immigrants at the southern border have been allowed to do?
Because the law doesn't allow that to happen. And that's why we're asking the Congress to consider changing the law. But in the meantime, we can guarantee their safety if they wish to leave by taking them to third countries.
From Afghanistan, I'm Afghan support woman. Any message, good message for Afghan women in future, because they have achievement. They are really concerned about their achievement.
They are very concerned, with good reason. When I was in Afghanistan, I've been there a number of times. I remember being in a school outside, and by the way, the schools in Afghanistan are not fundamentally unlike schools on the West Coast, where they have, you know, an area in the middle that is sort of looks like a playground, and single-story buildings connected around it. And I remember speaking to a group of young women, I guess they're roughly, don't hold me to this, they look like they'd be 14, 15 years old. And they're in school, and there's a tiered classroom with single light bulbs hanging from the ceiling, as I know you know. And I said, you know, the United States came here to make sure that we got this terrorist Osama bin Laden, and that terrorist didn't amass again to go after our country. And then we're going to have to leave. And the young woman said, you can't leave. You can't leave. It was heartbreaking. You can't leave. She said, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor. If you leave, I'll never be able to be a doctor. Well, that's why we spent so much time and money training the Afghan security forces to do the work of defending that. Well, anyway, So, yes, I'm aware. I'm going to take one more question.
Have you spoken with any Taliban officials about the withdrawal?
Mr. President, the Taliban being in Russia today. The Taliban.
Mr. President, thank you. I wanted to ask, with the benefit of hindsight, you've spoken to the fact that the Taliban are sort of at their militarily strongest point that you've seen in 20 years. How do you feel personally about that with the benefit of hindsight and all of the dollars and investments and American troops that were sent there?
Relative to the training and capacity of the ANSF and the federal police, they're not even close in terms of their capacity. I was making the point. The point was that here we were. The argument is, well, we could stay because no one was dying. No Americans are being shot, so why leave? Once the agreement was made by the last administration, we were going to leave by May 1st. It was very clear that a Taliban that had always been a problem was even a more sophisticated problem than they were before. Not more sophisticated than the ANSF, the government, more than they were. The point being that it would have increased the prospect that they would have been able to take more lives of Americans if they decided we weren't going to go after them. That was the point I was making. Thank you all so very much.
Have you spoken with any Taliban officials on the withdrawal?
Mr. President, what do you make of the Taliban delegation going to Russia today?